talk to you about something that we do a lot. I think the only thing we do more is probably sleep. The topic of the day is working and what we put into our work, how we feel about our work, and our attitude towards our life in relationship to the work that we do. And there's this saying that a lot of people like to kind of put out there, and it goes along with this emphasis on finding your passion, which is a big part of our culture. And the saying is that if you find something that you love, that you will never work a day in your life. I'm sure you've heard this before. And I'm just going to begin to talk about work by commenting on that particular saying. And idioms are kind of cool. They give us a jumping off point for discussion, but a lot of times they kind of get into our brain and make us think that this is the only philosophy, because if it's something that has kind of gone viral in a cultural way that everybody's saying that same thing, it tends to seem like we have to accept it. But in reality, I think that statement is really problematic because it presupposes that work is inherently negative and that it would be somehow bad if we had to work a day in our life. And it also creates this dichotomy between doing what we love and working. And I think that we can get into a mental trap by dichotomizing those things. And I think it's a really unhealthy way of thinking about life. So what is my philosophy about work? Let's start with this. Just amazing poem by Marge Piercy that I absolutely love. It's called To Be of Use, and I encourage you to go and check it out and read it. She's an incredible American female contemporary poet. And she starts out her poem by saying that the people I love best know how to jump into work headfirst without dallying in the shallows. And that idea of getting around other people who understand the inherent value and joy and reward of hard work and getting into that zone with them, not dallying in the shallows, but diving in, is very fun, exciting, and something that will bring you a great reward. I got my little kitty over here who's making some noise. And so I'm gonna move her little fun thing over here. Hello, Luna. She's getting at her day of work, apparently. Anyways, so let's talk about why maybe it's shallow and dallying in the shallows. To look at work a different way, I'm gonna go off of her word. And here's the deal. At some point, we really have to grow up and not be afraid of hard work or feel like it's somehow imposing on our life. And I know that sounds a little bit harsh. I don't mean to sound harsh, but there's an immaturity to thinking that we need tons of leisure time all the time, or to think that doing hard work somehow is taking away from some other aspect of our life. And I think that when we give ourselves permission to enjoy the reward of being useful, of making a contribution, it doesn't have to be glamorous. In fact, Marge Piercy, later in the poem, she says, the work of the world is common as mud, botched, it smears the hands, it crumbles to dust. I mean, sometimes we work really hard at things, or we give ourselves to a job and it comes to nothing. But no matter what you're doing, how long you're doing it for, what it does or does not lead to, there is something really respectable about getting up in the morning, putting your clothes on, and going to work and earning a living and making the money that you need to feed yourself, to house yourself. That is a basic element of just being a human being. And it has been from the inception of time, and I believe it will be forever. And so embracing that is part of becoming an adult and realizing that it is not necessary to just be entertained all the time. And we live in a very entertainment-centric kind of a world. We often equate rest and relaxation with zoning out in front of the television. Or really just scrolling on our phones and doing that much. But the truth is that when you learn how to work hard and put your hours in during that day, and you ask of yourself an attitude that says, this is a respectable thing to do, and I want to do it, and I'm going to give of myself. I'm going to enrich the lives of the people that are around me, and I'm going to go home satisfied at the end of the day that I have worked. And I think we've lost that a little bit. And I know that it is a wonderful thing to love your job, and that not everybody does. And I'm a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit unfair for me to talk about that because I do love my job. I love it very much. However, part of why I love it, it's not because it isn't work. I work extremely hard. I not only work during the hours that I am paid to work, but I have to bring home a lot of work as well. I'm an English teacher, and so I grade papers sometimes for 6 or 7 hours on the weekend. I grade papers and plan lessons for at least 1 to 2 hours a night during the week. And so during the school year, honestly, I'm working quite a lot. And I do love it, but part of why I love it is because of the fact that I understand the trade-offs that I have made. And no matter what you're going to do, you're probably going to have to give something up. And we don't like to do that. We want it all. And the sad truth is, but not the negative truth. Maybe it's just a little sad as you kind of come into it and realize that, you're crossing over that threshold from childhood into adulthood, and recognizing that life is all about choices. And I had a really good friend that I worked with back in Janesville when I lived there, and I lived in Beloit and I taught in Janesville for 6 years. And there's this lady named Patty Schneider, feisty, just wonderful, powerful woman. And she used to look at her students and she would say, listen to me. The choices you make determine the life you live. And that saying, this is an idiom I can really get behind. And the truth is that everything is about choices. And if you want one thing, you might have to give up something else. I knew that going into education, I was probably not going to become a millionaire, probably not going to make a huge amount of money. But I gave that idea of being wealthy or being in a career where you could sort of aspire to that next level of pay, because a lot of pay in education is very regularized and there's not a lot of pay increases. But I traded that off because it was what I wanted to do, what I felt called to do, what I felt matched my gifts and my talents and my abilities. And so you give up one thing to have another. A lot of people want to be famous or be in a rock band or, tour the world and do this or that. And that's very glamorous and it sounds really fun. And I have a very, very close dear friend who really made it in the music industry, which is kind of unheard of. But there's a trade-off there too. There's the fact that you're traveling a lot, and some people love that, but when you're raising a family and you have other things that you want, the intensity and the requirements of that kind of a life can take a toll. Now, if you have understood that sacrifice, you've made it willingly, and you're going on and doing that thing because it's what you want to do, then hopefully you feel that you love it. Just like I feel like I love what I'm doing, even when I'm on my 5th hour of grading papers. And if you don't learn to love it, then you will resent it, and then there's a problem. And if that resentment gets into you and you are feeling like, I hate what I do, it's definitely time to make a change. Don't quit your job until you have another job, but nobody ever said you have to do what you're doing forever. You took this job and you have to stay there forever. There's choices that we make and times and seasons for change, and that's all wonderful. I want to hit on 2 other quick things. The first thing is that it's really important that you do things that light you up. I love this phrase because I think that we are most alive and most in the moment when we're submitted to the opportunity that we have taken. And so every job I've ever had, I have submitted to the opportunity to connect with the people that are there, to bring life to those who are around me, to get to know different people, to learn a new skill. And I am personally lit up by and passionate about and excited about those kinds of opportunities. And it doesn't matter what the job is, whether I was waitressing or working at a record store or babysitting or teaching 8th grade, which wasn't a really great fit for me, but I did that for a couple of years. And then later I moved to the high school level, or teaching a class. The curriculum wasn't really what I wanted to be teaching. I still just really sucked the marrow out of that experience and got everything I could out of it. And I let it light me up. And when you light up, you illuminate the lives of other people. So important. The last thing I want to talk about is this idea of what if you have a hobby or a passion or something that you've really devoted a lot of time to growing up. Maybe you're a musician, maybe you're an artist, maybe you like theater. These are all in the arts, but maybe it's skiing, maybe it's skateboarding, maybe it's painting. I don't know what it is. There's all kinds of different things that people do that they really, really love. And should it be your career? Should you go for that? Or is that something that would be a hobby for you? And here's the thing I want to say to you. There's no right answer to that question. It's all about what I was talking about before, making sacrifices, deciding what you care most about, choosing whether the benefits of possibly pursuing this career versus a different career that funds this extracurricular activity that you love to do. It is up to you. What are you willing to sacrifice? I know several people who have gone into the theatrical field, and it's a sacrifice, but they love what they're doing. And at this season of their life, they're willing to have the sort of uncertainty of that. On the other hand, I have a lot of friends who have chosen to pursue a career in one thing, but have never, ever given up these other wonderful things that they love. For example, some of my mom's really good friends were in a music group when they were younger, and it was something that was very rich and rewarding part of their life. They had children, they have families, they've had various jobs, but man, they are out there rocking and rolling and playing out, and they have a band now, and they've never given up their love of music, even though they weren't willing to necessarily sacrifice every other aspect of what they wanted in their life to have a music career. But they still bring joy to other people by making music, even now that they're in their 60s and 70s. I just think that's amazing. I also have I have two uncles who are incredible artists, both of them painters. One is an insurance man, has been for most of his life, very successful at what he does, takes a lot of pride in his work. My other uncle is a school teacher in a challenging school district where he does a lot of good for a lot of kids and teaches them really important skills that can help them in their future. But both of them still paint. They've never stopped painting. And I have the joy of looking at their paintings hanging on the walls of my own house. When I go to my brother and sister's restaurant, the walls are lined with their beautiful paintings. They sell paintings. They didn't give that up. It's a very important part of their lives, and I think that's such a beautiful thing. And so there's no one-size-fits-all choice-making algorithm for this life. It's a lot of cost-benefit analysis and figuring out what you value most, what you want most, and then making those choices. And according to Patty Schneider and me and lots of other people that have made choices that lead them to lives that are very fulfilling and very wonderful, that embrace work and are full of other amazing, wonderful other activities that also enrich their lives. The choices you make determine the life that you live. And I really encourage you not to dichotomize life and work. And even that phrase, the life-work balance, suggests that work is one thing and life is another thing, and that those two things have to come into balance, which is completely unrealistic, actually, because the truth is that the pendulum is always swinging this way. The weights are going like this, and how much you work depends on what season of life you're in. And those two things, like what you do in your life outside of work and how much you work, it's never going to be a perfect balance. It goes like this. And also it implies that Working is the opposite of living. And if we're spending the majority of our days working, and that's not living, what a sorry and pathetic life we would live. That is a horrible way to think about things, and I encourage you to dismiss that thought completely from your mind and realize that no matter where you are, as long as you are breathing, you are living. And that life is something that can light you up and help you to light up other people's lives as well. Thank you so much for listening. I enjoyed speaking with you today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.